Okay, so are we on?
Yes, we are now broadcasting.
All right, well, I will call the meeting to order, and even though I'm looking at the agenda here, there is no roll call, but let's do one anyway and just have everyone chime in. So this is Al Mendel, the committee chair and representative from Hayward, and then Scott Diane next, please.
Vice Chair.
Diane Martinez from City of Emeryville.
Scott Haggerty, Alameda County.
Okay, and then
Nick
staff
Chafford with East Bay Community Energy.
And Stephanie.
Oh, and Stephanie with East Bay Community Energy. Cabrera.
Thank you all. Do we have anyone else on the call? Okay, and I know that Director Aradine is going to be joining us hopefully momentarily, and then Chair Kalb will probably be late if he's able to join at all. So,
Mr. Chair, just real quick, Mr. Chair, I will have to sign off at 1.
At 1 o'clock?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, we'll try to keep things moving, and if there's anything that is really urgent, we'll try to do that about 10 minutes before 1 o'clock to maximize. We'll be here for that. So, first item on the agenda, we don't have public comments today. I don't know, Stephanie, is there any members of the public that are even on the call?
There are 5 members of the public. I have not received any emails, and I do not see any with their hands raised.
Okay, and we don't have general public comments, but we will be accepting comments from the public on individual items. So for those of you who are on the call, please raise your hand when we get to the item that you want to talk about, and Stephanie and I will figure out how to make sure that we call on you and give you a chance to speak. So with that, let's jump into the agenda. First is, well, I see it's item 3, but it's our first item. It's the approval of the minutes from March 6th, 2020. Were there any corrections to that?
Move the
So I'm
item.
going to.
Second.
Perfect. And then are there any objections to approval? Hearing none, it passes unanimously of those present. Next up is the update on EBCE response to COVID-19. And before we jump into that, though, Nick, since we don't have everyone, do you want to take these in the order listed, or do you want to save that one for when we have a couple more folks? Do you care?
Sure, we can do our contracts entered into first. That will be quick.
I think that'd be my preference, and hopefully Director Aradine will join us by the time we're done. So we'll take item 5 next, contracts entered into. It's an informational item. Mr. Cassett.
Yeah, so we have 6 contracts that we're reporting that were executed prior to our March 18th meeting, but because we had changed that into a special meeting, we didn't cover these contracts at that meeting. So these are the first is a contract for photography and video services. The second is a cost-sharing agreement with Silicon Valley Clean Energy and San Jose Clean Energy, 2 other CCAs with no specific costs associated. It's just the structure to allow future cost sharing. The third is with Willdan Energy Solutions. This is a contract for up to $10,000 for for support for certain very large customers who we're providing some customized energy analysis for. The fourth one is a $5,000 sponsorship of the Oakland Marathon. This was executed prior to the cancellation of the marathon, so we're in conversations with them about what does this get carried over. The fifth is an amendment to a BACMUD grant. If you recall, about a year and a half ago, we won a $270,000 or so BACMUD grant for solar and storage on critical facilities. So this is just on adjusting certain tasks and timelines, but no meaningful impact on the grant itself. And then the sixth is a contract with Grid Alternatives for some consulting services. We're working with Grid, which is an organization that installs solar on low-income residential and multifamily. It's a project. We're looking to implement a project with them where we would support the deployment of solar for customers who are at risk of being disconnected because they can't pay their bill. So this is the kind of first phase of that, where we're doing some exploratory analysis of what the scope of that program would be. So then I have two other items that were executed after our board meeting. One is with Community Printers, which is a printing and collateral services contract. And one is with Cross Border Energy for expert witness services that they provided to us and a series of other CCAs through our intervention in the PG&E bankruptcy.
Okay. Before we take questions, were you done with the report, Nick?
Yes.
Yeah. So before we take questions, I do want to acknowledge that Director Arreguín joined us. Can you hear us okay?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can.
Great.
Excellent.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you for
Hope you're
joining.
staying safe.
And also, I see we have Howard Chang, staff, who also joined, so I want to acknowledge you as well.
Hello.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So next, questions on any of these contracts from any of the committee members? I don't see any raised hands, but you can jump in if you want.
So Al, can I ask a question?
Go for it.
I'm just curious. I don't see anywhere where I can push the button to raise my hand. So what am I missing? Because normally it's down on the bottom.
Okay, if you roll your mouse or the cursor down to bring that new menu up, you should see your microphone, a video, the participants.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, wait a minute, I just lost you. Hello?
Hello, we can still see you. So I think you
Really?
just don't have the screen. Yes.
Yeah, so what do I do?
Okay. You'll want to find that Zoom window again. It looks like, are you on the browser or in the app?
I don't know. Don't worry about me. Keep going, and I'll might have to come back in.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a relatively small group, so I think for the, 6 of us, if you can't figure out how to raise your hand using the technology, then just interject in. That's fine too. So again, any questions on any of these contracts entered into? Okay, well, it's just an informational item, so there's no action. But thank you for the report, Nick, and for keeping us apprised of any of the contracts. So moving on then to our next item, the update on the EBCE response to COVID-19. And Mr. Chassett, I'm sure this is going to be you kicking this off.
Yes, I am now just doing a screen share.
Okay.
So just hold on. Okay. All right. Can
There we
you
go.
see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Great. So this item is an overview of the steps and actions that staff have been taking over the last, I would say, 3 weeks as we have been responding to the shelter in place and just the larger effects of the spread of COVID-19. So we're going to cover 5 topics: business continuity, give some insight into what's happening with our energy load, as you would expect as businesses close and people are staying home. It's going to just change the way people use electricity. And so we've been monitoring that closely. It's also having some pretty significant effects in the energy market. So we've been monitoring kind of what's going on in the market. There are a series of customer marketing and customer services that we're focused on, which I'll touch on, and then spend a little time talking about what we are working on as sort of our community relief efforts. So first, from a business continuity perspective, we actually started preparing for work at home probably about 3 weeks ago. 4 weeks ago, actually, is when we started the planning process of, vetting various vendors, RingCentral, Zoom, etc. And so we put our technology solutions in place about 4 weeks ago. And then 3 weeks ago, the Wednesday prior to the shelter in place, we actually did an all office work from home day to be able to test, capabilities and make sure everybody had a good situation at home. From there, one of the main things that we took away was, we were probably going to need to allow certain people to take EBCE office equipment home with them, given that we were expecting an extended work from home period. So the Friday prior to the shelter in place, staff came in and picked up monitors, keyboards. They were all checked out by Adrian, our office manager. So we have a list of all the equipment people have at home. And we initiated full office work from home. The in place was called. So I would say in general, we've been pretty well prepared, and we're enough ahead of the curve to make sure that there weren't any disruptions. We've been using these Zoom and web conference tools to pretty good effect. Every morning, every team has a team-wide check-in, partially just to talk about the priorities, just partially to check in on each other, make sure everyone's doing okay. We have weekly all staff Zoom conferences where we check in on weekly priorities, and then our executive management team does a weekly check-in as well, where we kind of walk through what all the teams are working on and what's coming up in the next week. We've been trying to also, identify some social opportunities as people are home. So, we've been doing somewhat regular kind of after hours Zoom conference calls. We did send everybody lunch one day this week. One thing we've been wanting to do is find ways to give people something special, also find ways to support local businesses. So we so far have sent out about 75 lunches, to staff and their families. And I think that's been a nice benefit for staff, but also kind of a nice, very small investment in local businesses that are, being severely impacted. So that's sort of where we are. I think we're set up to continue to operate work from home for the foreseeable future. I think all of our critical services, energy trading, energy procurement, are all sort of steady and in good position to continue to operate. So we see no significant disruptions from a longer term work from home, which we're expecting multiple weeks at least. So that is business continuity. Next, energy load analysis. We are seeing both an increase in residential usage and a decrease in commercial usage since the shelter in place. So far, those have largely offset each other. So our overall sales have not been significantly reduced. It's just, commercial customers are not using, and residential customers are using. One of the effects, though, has been it's a flatter load shape. So, because people are at home, everyone's sort of using electricity, in a flat way. It's not like the duck curve, which you may have heard of, where you have like a big spike from 5 to 7. It actually looks a lot like the weekends. So the load we're seeing Monday through Friday looks a lot like load does on the weekend, where businesses are closed and people are at home using more electricity. One thing we have seen is it's been a milder 2020. So we haven't seen as much overall consumption associated with heating. We have a fair number of customers that have electric heating, and then even if you have a gas furnace, you still have the fan, electric fan. So that has just been caused an overall reduction in usage across the board. We are still, watching this pretty closely. As you can imagine, we only have 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks of data about what the shelter-in-place effects are going to be, and so we're watching it closely. One of the things that we've done is we actually have a specific watch list for our 250 largest customers, and we're actually every day looking specifically at what's going on there just to understand, are there any changes? We're doing outreach to those large customers as well, trying to understand, are they planning to resume operations, or are they going to be reducing operations, and do they have a schedule set? So we're trying to make sure that we have some visibility into what's happening with those large customers. So that is where we are with energy load, we're just going to continue to do that, on a day in, day out basis. From an energy market perspective, we're predominantly looking at the effects on our existing portfolio. For the next number of months, at least, we have largely procured the energy we need to procure, and that's just because we typically don't wait to the last minute to buy energy. We usually are pretty fully procured 3 to 6 months ahead of time. So we have the procurement that we have. So one thing we are doing is looking at our financial hedges and trying to determine, what are the financial impacts of energy market volatility on those hedges. We're doing a lot of stress testing to understand, what are the financial impacts of, energy prices going down by 10%, load going down by 10%, revenues going down by 10%, so that we understand, what we need to be ready for if any of these scenarios occur. And so that work is ongoing, and we're looking at trying to overlay various scenarios to kind of come up with what is our sort of our worst case, mid case, and best case. That also includes doing some research on past recessions and what happened. So we've been collecting data from other utilities, other electric utilities, but we're also looking to collect data from water utilities. So we're reaching out to, say, East Bay Mud to get their data on customer late payments and customer non-payment from the financial crisis. And I think if there are other ideas that you have for water districts in particular that tended to have prohibitions that put on disconnections, that would actually be really helpful. So please follow up with me if beyond East Bay Mud if you have ideas. And then the final point, and this is showed in this graph, is we are seeing a pretty significant reduction in energy prices. So the red line on this graph is the price of natural gas. And so if you see the price of natural gas has fallen since it's in kind of that February 1st timeframe when there was sort of the realization that this was hitting the U.S. and starting to really hit the global economy. We're seeing a pretty significant reduction in the price of natural gas. And also a very significant decrease in the price of Northern California electricity, which is the blue line. And so one of the things that's particularly challenging, particularly about the price of electricity, is you can see how volatile it is. So it dropped to below $31, close to $30, and then it popped all the way up to close to $35, and then it dropped again to $30, and now it popped back up to $33. So one of the things we're just seeing is that volatility, and we think that's largely because we haven't yet fully internalized. We, being the market and market participants, haven't fully internalized what all the effects are going to be over the course of the the coming months. So one of the things we're really focused on, because there's a lot of volatility, is getting our daily and weekly load forecasts right. You can imagine if suddenly businesses are closing, large customers are changing their operating schedules, and people are at home, that's going to change our load very significantly, and it's happening in ways that have been hard to predict. And so what we've been doing is trying to apply some machine learning techniques to the data that we've seen over the last week or two, to be able to develop some automated trend analysis to be able to help us understand what's coming tomorrow. So then next we have marketing and customer service. So from a key accounts perspective, we've been reaching out to our top 10% of accounts to get informal feedback around what, if any, operational changes they're going to make. What we have heard, and this is particularly from, say, like office buildings and owners, operators of office buildings, is they've been moving to weekend hours, which means, if there's nobody occupying an office or a floor, the lights won't be on, the HVAC won't be operating the same ways. So that is a reduction. But we have heard from some very large customers that they're not changing operations, continuing to operate as is. I would assume there probably are some customers who are using more electricity because they're critical, they provide a critical service, and they're actually operating more. One of the main areas we've been focused on from a customer service and account management perspective is payment policy. So first thing we did, and this is something that was raised at our board meeting, is we did suspend our collections policy. So we're not sending any customers to collections for non-payment at this time. And then we're also working closely with PG&E to develop a process to allow customers who are unable to pay their bills to go on to payment plans. And so, from my perspective, this, probably represents the single most significant thing we can do to help, the many customers and members of our community who are impacted by job losses, reduced hours, reduced business. And so we're working through exactly how we can best support our customers navigating through what is effectively a PG&E process, right? So we can't put a customer on a payment plan because PG&E still sends the bill, but we're working to figure out how do we help our customers quickly navigate that system. How do we make sure they're aware that this benefit is out there for them? In addition, there is a $100 bill credit that PG&E is offering to all its low-income customers, and so that's another area that we're focused on trying to partner with PG&E to ensure that as many of our customers who are eligible for that credit can get it. And as I did mention, we are looking at historical data about from past economic recessions to better understand what is the rate of late payment we might expect, what kind of write-offs might we expect, and that's going into our financial analysis to sort of understand what the impacts, financial impacts over the medium and longer term might be for EBC. And then finally, on the community assistance front, so at our board meeting, we announced that we would be making a $70,000 donation to Meals on Wheels and the Alameda County Food Bank. So we had a call with both of these organizations on Monday, and we're initiating the donation. For Meals on Wheels, the money is going to be apportioned to all of the organizations that implement Meals on Wheels across the county. So, the entities that provide Meals on Wheels for East County, South County, North County, and Mid County are all going to be getting some, a piece of the donation. We've also been, to the degree we have access to, we have been donating some of the very limited healthcare supplies we have. So we donated protective goggles, hand sanitizer, a couple hundred masks. We also have done some outreach to some of our solar industry partners who are building projects for us. they often have construction where they're a construction business functionally. And so in their warehouses, they often have masks. And so through that, we were able to facilitate the donation of 1,000 masks to Eden Health in Castro Valley. On the community relief front, we have formed a staff working group just to think about what are some other initiatives that we can be pursuing to provide more community benefit and more community relief. One of the things we've been focusing on that front is, are there existing programs efforts, local development efforts, or marketing and events efforts where we can shift funds from say a project or a program we were going to be implementing over the course of the next 3 to 6 months, and actually shift those funds towards direct relief efforts. And so, that's something that we've been very focused on. And I think we've identified, pretty meaningful opportunities to shift, say, grants that we were going to be making to cities for energy projects. Those could be then shifted to grants that we make to cities and, all of our member jurisdictions to support their relief efforts. So that's it. That's what I got on our update. Oh. Al, I can't hear you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick. So I don't see any hands raised, but I'm going to call on the committee members. Jesse, Director Arreguín, go ahead.
Thank you very much. So I am concerned about our commercial accounts. And we know that small businesses particularly are being negatively impacted by this pandemic, and some may not open, some may close permanently. So I'm wondering, Nick, if your staff have given any thought to, what the impact may be if we are seeing less commercial load. And, after this shelter in place period is over, people are going to be probably working less from home. So people will be back, those that are going back to work will be going back to work. And so just wondering if there's been any sort of thought about the load shift that may occur, how that may impact our budget, particularly as we're going into our budget discussions.
So that is exactly what we've been sort of trying to better understand is, what do we expect the impacts to be? And so part of the challenge today is to understand, what beyond, the data we have from the last 2 weeks. And so we're going through that exercise. We started first monitoring, our largest customers, but I think we're working down the stack to start to monitor, smaller and smaller customers to see, if there are structural changes in how they're using energy, because that sort of suggests if you have a restaurant or a class of customers, it's a lot of restaurants, and you see significant reduction, that you presume that they're probably closed. And so our stress testing is around looking at that information and sort of seeing what are our costs and what are our revenues under a scenario where this load doesn't come back, or in a 3 month, 6 month, 12 months or longer time frame. And so we're kind of developing a financial model with that in mind.
Okay, and then one final point is that, as we're starting the budget discussion, over the next couple of months, and we know that there's been a delayed implementation of the PCIA increase, but that it is going to have an impact on our budget next fiscal year. I know one of the things that staff had initially suggested is potentially increasing rates. And I think the economic climate may put us in a position where you have to kind of evaluate budget balancing options. So I just want to express my appreciation to staff for all their work and, kind of assessing the energy market and looking at, what the potential economic impact will be to our agency. And there's no question that every government agency is going to be adversely impacted, as we're going into a recession. And so how we can, anticipate and prepare for those impacts is important. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Arreguín. Vice Chair Martinez?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to voice my support for the staff's direction on community assistance efforts. I think that direct relief efforts in the county are going to be very important. I know that I've seen a lot of outcry on behalf of our healthcare workers for personal protective equipment countywide. And I just want staff to continue to work with our member agencies on specific solutions for each jurisdiction, because we're all going to have different needs and different ways that we're going to be looking to help our communities. So, you know, for instance, in my community, the next thing we're bringing up after our eviction moratorium is rental assistance. So we're going to be creating a fund to help those small businesses and tenants who are in real trouble in the next few months. So I just wanted to thank staff for these efforts.
Thank you, Vice Chair Martinez. Director Haggerty, do you want to chime in at all?
No, I think everybody seems to be doing just fine. I do appreciate the fact that we're going to really be analyzing where we're going to be spending the dollars to put back into the community going forward.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'll echo some of those comments. I think it is good that we're looking for ways to help out. I do want to caution Nick and the staff team to be, you know, mindful of potential hits to our own bottom line, and to be planning for that as well, especially if you start to see usage data that you know, suggests that some of our hedges could expire unused or worthless, and you know, the commensurate loss that could potentially happen as a result of something like that, or if we're going to start to see large percentages of our customers not paying promptly, and the need to then float that cost for some number of months, and the commensurate hit to our bottom line. You know, last year something like this had happened when we had a significant cushion. I wouldn't have been nearly as worried about that as I am this year, given that we were already expecting them to be very tight. And so just as you're making these decisions to make donations and contributions, I just hope you're also, of course you are, being mindful of our own bottom line at the same time and not overcommitting us.
Thank you for that. I think the primary feedback on the sort of relief response efforts that I think would be really helpful is, we have money that's been approved in our budget that we were going to spend over the course of the coming months. And I think from a purpose perspective, these are money to support events and programs, and so I think it's really the feedback to say, is there comfort in redirecting funds that were already budgeted, that were likely to be spent away from some programs and initiatives towards relief efforts, recognizing that anything that we don't pursue from a programs perspective now, it's not that we're not going to do it, it's just that we're reprioritizing, and we will then revisit those program initiatives in the next fiscal year and consider them then. But for now, let's reprioritize on the immediate need.
So I see that Director Arreguín, your hand is up if you wanted to comment on that particular.
Yeah, I support the approach that Nick has just suggested. If we're not going to be sponsoring certain events, or certain local development projects are not going to happen, like, I know that we had in the presentation we got from JP, initiative around, encouraging restaurants, for example, to transition towards sort of electrification. And there are other local development projects that may not be proceeding at this time. So I support reprioritizing those funds to support local relief efforts. It's not only good for the agency in terms of increasing our visibility, but also in supporting our communities during this most difficult time.
Thank you. Vice Chair Martinez.
I support staff's direction as well. And Nick, it might be helpful for the committee to hear and for the public to hear how much of the funds that you actually were able to find liquid to work with. And you know, I think it's helpful to kind of frame that in the composition of our entire budget. It's not a
Sure.
huge part of our whole budget.
Sure. So in reviewing, particularly focusing on the programs and the marketing budgets, because these are budgets that, you know, were allocated, we identified $1.25 million of local program expenditures that are either going to be difficult to implement given the current climate, or we're frankly just not going to be able to do. You know, some of them are, as Mayor Dean referenced, incentives for certain customer classes that we don't actually expect to be able to support in the way we would like to in the near term. So, you know, a big chunk of the funds are actually for programs we are going to be implementing with our local government partners. So these are going to be technical resources for things like streamlining building permits. You know, again, we expect those are all things that are going to be significantly delayed. And so this is $1.25 million that we feel very comfortable redirecting without having a significant impact on the actual local development initiatives that we're going to be implementing in the near term. So this is not pulling funds from solar and storage efforts, from electric vehicle charging, and the like. These are more technical assistance. There's another $250,000 of marketing and outreach funds. Again, these are associated with campaigns we're going to be running or events we were going to be sponsoring that, you know, we no longer believe we're going to be able to do. So in total, we've identified $1.5 million that we feel very comfortable redirecting from you know, current approved expenditures to sort of relief efforts. I think predominantly the feedback we've gotten is that given each one of our member agencies, our member cities is pursuing a lot of different relief strategies in their own communities. So we want to actually work with each one of our cities to allocate kind of a pro rata share of these funds directly to the county or the city, or directly to the uses that the county or the city deems priorities. Then we're also thinking of taking a smaller chunk, a couple $100,000, that East Bay would administer as grants to community-based organizations. So these would be smaller grants that we would be providing to, you know, very, very similar to the grant we made to Meals on Wheels and the food bank, but these would be additional grants we would be making over the coming weeks.
Thank you, Nick. Director Haggerty, did you want to chime in on that point?
I still haven't found the hand raising thing, although I was able to push on the bottom. But, you know, I hope that as we move forward, and I'm sure this is what we're all saying, but, you know, that we really move towards vulnerable populations. I think that, you know, it's kind of like the government and them throwing out all these stimulus checks, you know, to all these people, and some of them are still working and still getting money. So it's just kind of a bonus to them. To me, it seems like it would have been better if they would have upped everybody's unemployment checks instead. So I think it's good for us to focus on who actually needs it at this time. And I think that's the direction we're moving, and I hope that's the direction we continue to move.
Thank you, Director Haggerty. Yeah, I would just sort of agree with my colleagues and with our CEO. I think that, you know, repurposing some of the marketing dollars and distributing those to local nonprofits, there's a certain, you know, logic there in terms of, you know, outreach efforts, and then maybe repurposing some of the local development money, the projects that simply cannot move forward right now. You know, the restaurant electrification of kitchens is a good example. Restaurants are not going to be engaging on that right now. And so for those projects that we're going to be moving forward with eventually, but not at the moment, maybe purposing those to distribute them to our local agency partners, to be, you know, putting it to immediate use in this emergency. Again, there's sort of a nexus there, a local benefit component that makes perhaps some sense. So I I'm not seeing any other hands up from the committee members, but I do
There's
have
public
one
comment.
from Jessica Tovar. So Stephanie, can you help unmute her so that she can speak?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please
Okay,
go
good.
ahead.
Yeah, I'm actually, I appreciate the presentation. I'm particularly interested in the community relief response and just wanted to add, I do know of a partner organization that's kind of doing mutual aid work right now, but they're like not an official, like, you know, 501c3 nonprofit. So I just wanted to throw that out there for consideration on how a group like that would fit into this, to apply for funds or however this is going to work. And then the other comment I have is like more general process. Are we not having like open comment at the beginning of our meetings anymore, or did I miss it? And I think that that is a concern of folks from East Bay Clean Power Alliance, is, you know, having that open public comment. And then I did have another thing. Oh, and then I had a question around community advisory committee meetings. At this time, since I know we're in a different phase of working through community energy. So those are just my comments and kind of questions.
Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate that. Nick, did you want to respond to any of those?
Yes, so we are expecting to support a community advisory committee meeting, you know, using this very same Zoom platform. So I believe Stephanie is working with the CAC on that. You know, I to the first point around, you know, eligibility for community grants, I think that's something we're going to be working on. You know, you do run into challenges with informal groups around, you know, kind of what their status is. So I expect that we will likely focus on supporting, you know, groups that kind of have a formal status as, you know, nonprofits or what have you. But, you know, we're certainly very open to having discussions if there are some really, really good ideas. And I think to the public comment, you know, what we've been doing is we're implementing the updates to the Brown Act that Governor Newsom has put in place. You know, I think it's really, if the board would like to go beyond what the Brown Act requirements are, that's certainly something that we can support. But that said, we are still trying to work through kind of the mechanics of doing these meetings virtually. And so we wanted to sort of keep them as streamlined as possible.
Okay. Thank you, Nick.
And if I can just jump in really quickly and just say that the members of the public are more than welcome to email cob@ebce.org and share their thoughts and comments, and I can distribute that to the board.
Okay. Thank you, Stephanie. I don't see any other hands raised from our attendees or our board members. I'll pause for a moment to give folks a chance to change that. Okay. Then we will move on to our next item, I guess, which is, but there isn't one. So there isn't even an option here for, you know, committee member comments and suggestions for future meetings, which we should probably add that as well. And I do appreciate that, you know, this is sort of an experiment in terms of using the new technology. I think it went really well in terms of the technology. You know, the visual is very good. The presentations are very clear. So I'm hopeful that we can make use of this for the next full board meeting, even with a larger group. And I think it would be nice to try to add back in the public comment portion. You know, maybe, you know, we can limit it to a certain number of speakers, not that we, you know, usually get, you know, an excessive number if we're worried about, you know, the length of the meeting, which is a valid concern, given that this technology does slow us down a little bit. But I think there might we ought to be able to find a way to make it work, I think.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So the
Dr.
way we
Aggie.
did it at the county is we gave them till 5 o'clock the night before to email in comments, and then the clerk simply read them. So that's one
Yeah,
way.
we're doing that in Hayward as well. We've got a couple ways to provide electronic comments, and I think that's good enough. But it'd be nice, especially if this is something that's going to last for months. We don't know that, but if it is, I think we need to figure out a way to allow public comment again at some point. So I would just encourage staff to think about that further. Any other comments or interjections before we conclude the meeting?
Well done. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you all.
Mr. Chair,
Go
just
ahead.
I know that you complimented the video and everything on the production here, and I just want to say, Stephanie, you're the master at this. You've got this thing figured out, because I was on one yesterday with ACTC and we didn't see video or anything, and this is probably the best production that I've seen done so far. So, good job.
Thank you. It was definitely a team effort. So thank you to Adrian and Vanessa who are also listening on the line.
Okay, well, good job.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Stay safe.
Bye.
Jesse,
Yes, Scott.
we need to talk
Yeah, I think there's a call being scheduled for 3 o'clock, right?
today.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye.
All right.